Good evening. My name's Neil Redfern. I'm the Executive Director of the Council of British Archaeology, and I'm hosting our webinar tonight, which is going to be about the story of the Scottish Crannog Centre up on Loch Tay. Now, we've got one slight amendment to tonight's performance. Unfortunately, the director of the Scottish Crannog Centre, Mike Benson, can't be with us. That's because Mike has had to attend a planning committee meeting for the future of the actual Crannog Centre itself. They are moving to a new site, and planning committee was moved from last week because of the events around the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. And so Mike actually had to attend the planning committee today. So unfortunately he couldn't make it, but what he did is we've got two for the price of one. And instead, Rich Hiden and Rachel Backshall are here, who are the assistant directors of the Scottish Crannog Centre. And I know they're going to give us an absolutely fascinating talk about the story of the Crannog Centre, what it's trying to achieve, some of the really quite momentous events that has actually happened to it over the last few years. I was particularly lucky to actually visit the Scottish Crannog Centre during the Festival of Archaeology this year, and I was there for just under a day. I stayed over, and I had an absolutely fantastic time, and I am absolutely delighted that both Rich and Rachel can be here. So the talk will be about 45 minutes. There'll be time for you to ask questions. When you ask your questions, if you could please use the Q&A function on Zoom, that'd be great. Then everyone will be able to see those questions. If you use the chat, we'll read those questions out as well, but please, we'd like just to focus on the Q&A. That'd be absolutely great. Okay. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is hand you over to Rich and Rachel and wish you a very pleasant evening hearing about the Scottish Crannog Centre. Richard, Rachel.
Hello.
Hello, how are you doing? I'm just going to do some technology to start with. Hold on.
You can launch there.
I'm just going to do the technology.
Yeah. What are you here for? Steady, go. Right, yeah. Okay. So hello. So my name's Rachel, and Rich is joining me. We're both the assistant directors for the Scottish Crannog Centre, to introduce the Crannog Centre, we're an open-air Iron Age museum on the shores of Loch Tay in northern Perthshire. We're a small museum, roughly 25 to the team, and we had, up until June last year, a reconstructed Iron Age crannog from around 500 BC. We also host a collection of objects of around 5,000 objects from crannogs, two mainly in Scotland. We have Oakbank Crannog, which is a site on Loch Tay, which was excavated around 35 years ago ongoing, up until about 2007. And we have some objects from a site on Lewis, which is called Dunvaravat, which again, so that we sort of have the collection from two sites from the same period, which tell quite a very strong story and a very powerful story about life in prehistoric Scotland. And we also have a small Iron Age village as well, and kind of lots and lots of things that are interactive and things for people to do that is very hands-on. So that's kind of a brief introduction to the Crannog. I will also say just in advance, if the dog barks, I'm really sorry. We're zooming in from at home. But yeah, so we're just going to start with a very quick video. So on June the 11th of 2021 at 11 o'clock at night, we had a fire on site, and the Crannog reconstruction was pretty much engulfed in flames. So from 6 minutes from the first smoke to a full inferno, and it was unsavable. So this is just a very, very quick video to give you an introduction to that.
Just when I arrived, it was already entirely in flames. When the first flame started, the thing being overtaken, it's roughly about 6 minutes. Nothing anybody could really have done. It was gone, basically. It's heartbreaking, I think, is the big thing.
I was in tears mostly yesterday and all night, the night before. I can't look at it. I just paint it out. Incredibly sad, because this has been here for 25 years as a place, but obviously it's telling the story of people that were here 2,500 years ago. Staff in tears. I gave them a talk about what this would mean, and in the short term, but in the long term, you know, this would be an opportunity. It's a horrible word to say, but we were going to move anyway. It's a bit daunting. So we bought the new site for the new development, and the plan was that we'd take it one step at a time, and we'd get over each hurdle as you're doing these things, and it can take years. We know that, and we'd set our stall out with one thing and another to get. We've done the first phase of the business planning. We've got the initial master planning done, so we're kind of on some sort of road that needs to shift now. So I'm optimistic, but understand that there is huge doubt as well. But we've probably got to accelerate the process a little bit if we're going to keep the team together. If we're going to make this happen, we need to see if it's possible to do things quicker.
Or do we go back? That's the question. So as you can see, it was quite a dramatic event. We called in the team as soon as we were all together on the site of the fire, the Crannog, and had a meeting, and basically had to decide at that point to do what the Crannog community of 2,500 years ago would have done faced with something like this, which is to thank your lucky stars that no one was hurt, to gather up your belongings and your treasured possessions, which for us is our collection, and to move to a new home. So over the next few days, we had visits from local politicians, we had the leader of the council, our local MSP, even members of the Museum Galleries Scotland staff came along with cakes, biscuits, and also mental health first aid support for some of the staff as well. And they took some quite dramatic photos, which you can see one of here. Yeah. So while we were still cancelling the bookings, actually on the very next morning, one of the local businesses, Loch Tay Highland Lodges, they set up a Just Giving fund for us, which raised over £50,000 in the first month, and has since raised more. It was very much different people pulling together and showing their support for the Crannog, including Neil, who very generously did a sponsored bike ride and raised over £1,500, I think it was. Something for the centre, which was very unexpected and very kind. But you can see here the extent of the damage that was done to the site. So to go from an iconic building that stood on Loch Tay that people knew and loved and visited, to having nothing in the space of a night. We had to have a beach clear up over the next few days. We tidied the site, and within 5 days we reopened to the public for tours of the museum and the Iron Age village. So we reopened pretty quickly and shifted the interpretation we were doing to make sure that we were giving the same quality content, if not better quality content, with added stuff, just without the Crannog itself. So we adapted quite quickly and reopened. Dogs were also welcome. Reggie, our dog, even tried fundraising for £1 of pets, which didn't go very well because he's just too cute. But the thing is, we've tried to keep everything as normal as possible. So we are a dog-friendly site, and we encourage people to bring picnics, and all of those things continued 5 days after the fire. 10 days after the fire, we held a sellout music event, which really cemented our return to business as usual. And Mike requested that we pop this video in just to show you a little bit of what we were doing just days after the fire. This was made by Miriam Willan. Also, the original circus performance, which was occurring on the beach, was a fire performance, and within 4 days' notice, they had to change their entire thing because we felt like having fire. Yeah, it was a bit on the nose. So, and they were brilliant. Everybody kind of pulled together. So realistically, the loss of the Crannog for us changed everything, but fundamentally, it changed nothing. Where we are now is due to the work that didn't just happen over the past year recovering from the fire, but it's the work that we've accumulated and done over the past 4 years. Without this kind of backing and this foundation, we wouldn't have survived COVID, let alone surviving a fire or frogs or locusts, as Mike puts it. And so what we thought might be useful is to kind of take a step back and look at that footing that we put in place 2017, 2018 to now, and how that's supported us, and then supporting us into future as well. So just briefly from where we were to where we are now, I have to say personally, I didn't understand this slightly new way of working that came into play 5 years ago when we had a shift in director, and Mike Benson came into play. It was a new way of running a museum, and it didn't necessarily fit with my understanding of museums or my background or my education or work as an archaeologist. But slowly I saw that the way of work was far more natural than other places. It was chaotic and very, very hard work, but it allowed for care and trust and community, and there was a power within it. So I'm just going to show you a wee picture. So we went from a starting point as a visitor attraction for 20 years. That's what the Crannog Centre was originally. It became a museum in 2017, and then we moved forward to becoming what we would term being a museum that matters, becoming sector leading as described by Museum Galleries Scotland. And now we are on the way to becoming a national treasure with aims to become a national museum. And Museum Galleries Scotland recently described us as sector defining now rather than sector leading, and that's pretty big for a very small museum. This is due to a shift in our vision and a shift in our understanding of what we are able to do, our capacity as a community rather than working as an individual, and having that ability to dream and to dream really big. By having an ambitious vision, we've been able to focus on and have ambitious targets, taking that step to be a museum that matters, and really focusing heavily on the people that have abilities that bring them to the Crannog Centre. We're not expecting people to change when they arrive. People come and they are who they are. We encourage the ability to make decisions, have dispersed decision making right throughout the organisation. So you should be able to make the right decision in the right place in the right time and be the right person to do that, rather than having to go to somebody else. Previously, there was very little development in the team. Both myself and Rich were here pre-2017 and have seen the change. There's only, I think, 6 people or so that have seen the full change in the museum. So there was very little development in the centre or the team. There was very little confidence in the team's abilities. But now we have our learning. There's a lot of investment in learning. There's a lot of investment in training, in experience and supportive development, which is something that we're both working very hard to encourage right throughout the organisation. For example, just a small example, so a year before COVID, we started exploring the option of having an apprenticeship scheme at the Crannog Centre. When lockdown first hit and we went into first lockdown, we set it up. And when we opened in August, we opened with an apprenticeship scheme 2 weeks afterwards, taking on 5 young people from the local area who had had very little opportunity. After leaving school, they hadn't even had a prom. They didn't know quite what they were doing. One of the girls was meant to be going off to Africa for a year and she couldn't go. So they started with us and were just incredible. 6 months in, we had a review meeting in January during the winter lockdown. We did everything on Zoom and we asked them what they wanted to do next and what did they feel, where did they feel there was something that they needed to develop or they wanted to develop. And all 5 of them independently said that they would like to be able to present to different people. They'd gone from being hardly able to say their name to now speaking to 30 plus people in groups of tours. But they were saying, well, it'd be good to be able to tailor that skill to talk to specific groups of people, young people, older people, people from different backgrounds, people from different organisations. So that led to us organising 3 presentations for them. So we didn't just do a 12-month or a 6-month review meeting and kind of go, okay, that's great, stick it in the file. What we did was we organised 3 presentations with 3 different audiences for them to deliver. We did a presentation to local businesses, a presentation to a radical arts charity called Futures Venture, and a presentation to Museum Galleries Scotland. From that, Museum Galleries Scotland asked to organise a talk for museums and heritage associations and organisations all across the UK, which our apprentices then spoke to. They spoke to over 100 heritage organisations about why museums and our sector needs to employ more young people and people from different backgrounds and how important apprentices can be to the development of the museum. So that's just a sort of an example of the investment into the ability of these young people and the team. I've whittled on, sorry, Rich. The next image, just to show you this, is so that this way of working was led in part by the thinking that, well, led by the thinking that this diagram tries to kind of embody. So this was put together in 2017, working with the whole team to design a vision, mission and values. The vision being to be a national treasure loved by all with social justice at its heart. The mission being to, as a community, care for and make accessible the finds of Scottish Crannog excavations and to interpret the lives of Crannog dwellers for the benefit, enjoyment, education and inspiration of people of all ages. Within that, we put together our values, which are to be aspirational, listening, caring, listening, sharing, but caring is a very big part of this. Work, the ability to work and work hard, collaboration, the ability to dream, and post-COVID, or during COVID, we added togetherness into that because we felt that our place is a place for people to come together. As you can see on the diagram, what we're trying to do is recognize also that the abundance is always on the outside. So we have our knowledge and our skills as the museum team, but there are people on the outside who bring so much more, and we can learn so much more from, and they are on the outside of our organization. So how do we connect to them? At the heart of this entire diagram is that dispersed decision making, being the right person at the right place at the right time, to have that freedom of self to make decisions and to stand by them. So it's creating the Crannog community of 2022 to best relate to Crannog communities of the Iron Age. And the diagram sort of forms Crannog, held upon the foundation piles, sort of, but held upon foundation piles of care, communication and curiosity, having a can-do attitude, good information and reflection, which has guided the work that we've been doing since. Which, if you can do the next slide. So the reason that I'm going through all of this is that it's been really over 4 years since these changes started to take place. It's a very short period of time, actually, but 4 years is still 4 years. Only 6-7 of us were here to see the entirety of these changes. What we as an organisation began to understand is not only what we can be, but what we don't want to be. And just so that you can see, in 2017 to 2022, there were quite a lot of changes. There was really no sustainable care for the collection in the past. It was stored in a shed, and it wasn't on. A lot of it wasn't on display. It was owned by the archaeologists, not by. It wasn't cared for by the trust in the same way as it is now. And now it's on site, cared for and displayed and researched. The tour was very short. Now the tour is 2+ hours, and on event days we have people staying 4 or 5 hours. There was no story being told. It was more information, archaeological, factual, whereas now we're looking at the story that these people from the Crannogs of 2,500 years ago, what are their stories and what do we want to learn from them, rather than just what is this rock. There was even things like hidden finances, stagnation, only 3 full-time staff members, and a lot of staff, including ourselves, were seasonal, so you had to leave and find a different job in October through to March, which is very hard, and also it doesn't allow for development in the team. So you can see here there's quite a few things that we've changed, and the biggest thing, which we've sort of alluded to, is that Dulwich was an ongoing pipe dream for 15 years, whereas now the new museum at Dulwich is going to happen imminently. There's a few examples in the next couple of slides just to show you. So the visit used to be a tour of the museum, quick tour. It was used as a holding space rather than as somewhere that actually told a story or had value. Going to the Crannog, half an hour tour of Crannog, and 15 minutes outside, wood turning, packing a stone and making some fire. And then that was it. The interpretation has much developed since then. We now have an Iron Age village outside with demonstrations of technology, textiles people can get involved with, cooking every day where you can taste food inspired by the Iron Age. We have logboat interpretation, trade interpretation, lyre, pottery, wire jewellery, games, puppet shows and storytelling. And food, most importantly. With the events, we've expanded them to include up to 25 events a year plus evening events. We had 12 evening events this year with storytelling and music, drama performances. We've hosted Shakespeare. Just realised we've written storytelling wrong. Oh, no. And coach trips from Rick Steves as well. Again, the dwell time has been raised to allow ourselves to engage with people with the time that they deserve, not just expecting people to engage with us. And that's really been led a lot by also the work that Rich has been doing around uncertainty, and our museums about process and not always saying this is what this is, but what could it be? One more quick slide from this point of view. Some question we once got asked was, are you all related? As some of us obviously are, some of us are definitely not, but it's the aspect of community that it's with a larger focus on a shared vision for the future it can come across very much. You get this strong sense of community that people start to buy into. You start to see a shared language with people as well. Visitors come on site, start to use the same language that the staff are using, that the volunteers are using, that our Young Archaeology Club use. So there's a sort of a community feel. It ties back to what I said earlier about our vision for what the Crannog can be and what it can be going forward. It's a shift from a job to a community in how we behave, not just what we say. And by being best equipped to tell the stories of the past is by being a community today and being a diverse community as well, supporting many people with many different needs employed at the Crannog Centre, and that makes us stronger, not weaker. Next slide, I think, please. Just to show you also, we have an external community. So there's the internal community and the staff and the volunteers and the visitors that come every day. And then we have a growing external community of people that we work with, who we support and support us. So Museum Galleries Scotland have once described themselves as more like colleagues rather than a separate organisation. We've worked with a variety of different people over the past few years, and that's strengthening what we do and enabling us to make more. There's the very big welcome from the beginning of the tour. We had with the BBC a thank you for the fast response that we gave. There's a lot of work gone into developing these relationships, and in 2017 we didn't have really any of them to speak of that we do today. A big part of this is listening to others. So you have, that's it, 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should be able to do twice as much listening as talking. There's the abundance on the outside again, so it's listening to others, and then also showing leadership within those relationships. So we've been working with the Department of Work and Pensions Disability Confident scheme for employers, and it's a scheme that struggled to get off the ground. They have 3 tiers: Disability Confident Committed for employers, Disability Confident, and Disability Confident Leaders. And we're going through that at the moment, moving to leadership status in the next few months. And what we were finding is there was no network between all these different organisations that want to have this, want to work with people with lots of different needs, but maybe we're feeling isolated. So we asked to host a conference at the Crannog Centre. What's then come from that is I'm now working with the DWP offices in our region, but also nationally. And there's a conference happening in the next month where we will be the only employer speaking. It's going to be a conference to really show what these museums can do, and how much stronger your workforce is if everybody's different. So that's part of the I suppose hopefully a leadership role that we're taking within that. It does involve being open and willing to work with others and saying yes quite a lot, sometimes biting off more than you can chew.
Yeah.
This is again guided by our vision and mission and values, and this is a model that we've tried to put into an image. So comparing this to the model of 2017, I'll do in a moment, but you can see that our plans have grown a little bit. So this is guided by our vision, mission and values, our way of work, being brave, ambitious and political. We're aiming to be the most sustainable museum in Scotland. I created this diagram to try and capture the ecology of the Crannog Centre, guided by our values with love at the very core. You can see a variety of different aspects here of the work that we're doing, both now and the work that we're hoping to do in the future. There are 4 strands of sustainability that we are working on here, from being a special place people want to visit and support, a place that belongs and cares for its environment, a place of choice to work and grow, and a trusted partner that individuals and organisations want to work alongside. Sustainability has many aspects, from being green and environmental to sustainable relationships, people, communities, finance and skills. What we see is individual growth alongside community growth within a sustainable environment that promotes success. Would you say that's all right, Rich? I'm going to stop talking soon because Rich has got things to say. So as you can see, this is just to show the 4 things: to be a special place, a trusted place, a place to grow, and a place that belongs. And all these elements are, we chose a tree to show this truly, because a tree is only as strong as the different parts of it that are growing, and by losing one part, then it is less strong, less resilient, and less productive. So all of this is about building the resilience that allows us to cope with the unexpected, like COVID, to cope with the unexpected, like the fire as well, which nobody could have predicted, and needed a lot of resilience to get through for the team to get to the point we are at now. Yeah, I've only got 2 more slides. Bringing this back to the beginning, looking at where we were in 2017 to where we are now through the diagrams, they represent the shift in how we work, capturing us. In 2022 to 2025, the tree will only grow bigger as more people become involved. We implement new apprenticeship schemes, new ways of training and learning, becoming a fair work employer, holding a recognised collection, new collaborations with universities, schools, new branding, new people, and all the rest that comes from it. And just to show you one more picture from me, for me, this is a new journey. I've gone from not understanding it at all, and quite honestly, to learning, being open to change and trying really hard, to seeing the fire, the Crannog being gone, but the government and our team and everyone pulling around us, including the wonderful visitors who have decided that even without a Crannog, which we're still in shock for, we are still the 9th best place in the UK to visit. And we beat the British Museum, which was number 10. What we are fascinated by is how this is June. This is this year, from 2021 to 2022. How on earth have we managed to do this without having the Crannog? It says loved by travellers, they're the iconic landmarks you simply have to see to believe. We don't have that iconic landmark, and we haven't had it for the year that they voted us for this. So it says something about, I think, the way of work in the community. So just going forward, we need to build upon this foundation that I've just laid out to you now and keep the magic going. And this has accumulated in our new vision to be the most sustainable museum in Scotland. I'm now going to hand over to Rich.
You sure?
I am.
That's fine. Don't work for me. Yeah, the only thing I'd add is that the interesting is clearly something slightly different there, because when you look at the top 10 attractions in the UK, it was London, Edinburgh, York, London, Edinburgh, Kenmore, which is a little village in Scotland. So there's something, clearly kind of, there's a bit more going on, which I think is what Rachel's captured quite well there.
Quite well.
So moving forward, the LURB, the aim is that we've got to take what we've done for the past 4 years, coming up to 5 years, and we have to take that and we have to move that now. So the original plan was to move in 2025 at the earliest. We were going to take the time to fundraise, to plan, but with the fire in June, what that's meant is that the plans that we have had to be expedited. Although we might be doing really well without Crannog, we aren't, and we won't be able to run sustainably without that Crannog. We don't own the land that we're currently on, and we're quite constrained. There's a lot of constraints. I won't list all the constraints, but there are constraints that in no uncertain terms we need to move sites. So what we did prior to the fire, this was always planned in. We went through community asset transfer, as you heard in the video before, for this site, which is the Lurb, and that's what you see here. It's fairly large in comparison. We're currently running on 0.6 of an acre. The Lurb here is going to be, I think it's around 11 acres. The exact footage, I'm not sure, but it's around 11 acres.
It's
in
also
terms of space.
Just across the loch from the current site.
Yep, it's on the north side of the loch. So you can actually see it from where we are now, from the current site. So we went through community asset transfer. That community asset transfer process, we put a document together, a supporting document with a number of different sources and quotes and a plan for what we want to do with the Lurb. It came through Scottish Government. The site was Forestry Commission owned. So what that means is that Scottish Government could officially give us the land through community asset transfer. It has to be government owned to do that. And the end of that was that basically the price that it was valued at was £180,000. We said we'd give you 20 because we couldn't afford it. And the document as it was that was returned from them basically stated they were going to sell us the land. They couldn't charge us 20. They were going to charge us £1 instead. The Community Asset Transfer Committee came for a visit a couple of weeks ago. And the exact words of the lady that was the head of that committee said, simply put, it was just the easiest yes that she's had in a very long time. The value of the future work that we want to do, working with the groups, the communities, the schools, all the other plans that we had, that's been wonderfully laid out just before, it far outweighs the value of the land. And that is as a museum. If you want to be a museum, we're expected with the community asset transfer that what we're doing, and as we move forward, we will be a national museum, nationally accredited museum, and with all that responsibilities, you have to become a service for people in a way, and the value of that service was, as you said, far outweighed what we had before. So what we did is we started to plan the Lurb. We moved on to the plans of the Lurb. Once we had the land, it was 11 o'clock, not to make this sound suspicious, but it was 11 o'clock that morning. We had on the 11th of July confirmation that community asset transfer had gone through, and it was 11 o'clock that night that the fire took place at the Crannog. It's just the way of the world as it was. What that meant was, though, is that we had to get started, as I said, expedite the process. So we had the land, we've now got the land. So the next thing that comes up is the planning. Okay. So with the planning, what we've done with the entire process of building this new museum, the Iron Age village, everything that comes with it, is collaboration with this. So I think my drawing is much better than Mike's drawing. But we have what we call about it's a trinity of input with the entire development. So we've got a huge long list, which I'll come to in a minute, of architects, green woodworkers, as you can see there, archaeologists, builders, experimental archaeologists, curators, museum professionals, volunteers coming into the site, 100 other different people that have kind of fed in and their input has been put in. But the whole thing kind of comes down to this triangle that you can see there. What we build and what we want to build has to be viable, okay? So that viability is fixed on two kind of strands to that. Is it actually buildable? You know, if an architect looks at it and goes, is that something you can actually build and can you put together? But the other thing that you have to bear in mind is it usable? So we are a visitors centre. We will get, on a height of a year, previously 25,000 visitors a year. That with the building of the Lurb, we're intending to go up. That's going to be going higher up as the years go on. That's the plan. Can you get people around? Can people see? Is it a pokey little hut that people can't see into or get into? Or is it a demonstration shelter where people can see the skills, see the crafts, but also be inspired by the materials used? So it has to be viable for a visitor function, but also for an architectural function. But the other side of that is that everything we want to build, and this is really important, as it has to be, it is steeped in archaeological evidence, okay? We're not imagining, we're interpreting. So what we've got to do is take archaeological sites, archaeological evidence for the Iron Age in that period, and have those two functions kind of grounding the designs and what we're doing, okay? The last thing there, which is an important one, quite simply, is the element of romance as well, okay? We're dealing with our excavation of our Crannog in prehistory. Prehistory in itself is and cannot get away from the fact that there are large elements of uncertainty around it. There is certain elements, there are fixed things, there are the tangible, there is the stuff that we can be certain of, and the stuff that we can functionally talk about. But built into all this, there is always this element of testing and trialing and thinking about how people might have done things. And that phrase in itself, might have done things, can kind of seem like we're making stuff up. And that's really a wrong way to look at it. That they might have done things is us trying it out. And what that might have done things, if it be textile work, if it be what we're cooking in the cooking area, if it be the pottery that we're making, however that might be, that might is what enables the visitor through the door, instead of being lectured to engage with. They're not here being told this is this building that we build is what they lived in. We don't know if this building that we build is what they lived in, but it's what we think they might have lived in based off what we've found. They can then start to ask their questions, and they can start to, and it's using that uncertainty to enable people to engage with what we're talking about. And embedded into that is an element of romance. There's a huge, all the archaeology points towards the Iron Age and our Crannog, there being a huge level of skill. We have to upskill to meet the skills of the people 2,500 years ago. So actually, by going, what's the best we can make? We're going to do turf walls. I'll come to that in a minute. So we went to Iceland to learn about how to do these turf walls. And the turf walls that we're going to build, we want to build, and this might seem like an odd term to use, but the sexiest turf walls we can, because we want people to look at that and understand the level of skill that the people in prehistory had. We don't want to look at that and go, that's a dingy turf wall. We want people to kind of be able to understand and, again, ask those questions. So there's that element of romance that has to be embedded into what we do. So with all this, we moved on towards the planning, and this is how we planned this. We did this, and we had all these different individuals inputting. The Scottish Crannog Centre Trust, with all the team that I mentioned before, the green woodworkers, the architects, all these different people were feeding in. And then again, the abundance is on the outside, all these other people here feeding in to create a plan, which is what you've got on the left-hand side there, which is the first, this the one, everything you see here is what went on to the planning portal. So these are all publicly accessible documents if you'd like to go and see them. But the point being is that what we ended up with is a village which celebrates and showcases the skills. But not only that, it celebrates and it showcases the resources that these people had. And what we're doing is we're pulling all this in, okay? And the end product is that what we want to build, now that we have our idea and we have our structure and we have the plan as you see it here, the next step is to go into how do we actually build it. And that's where the ethos of how we run the organization, training, development, freedom of self, all starts to build in, and we'll have 1,000 fingerprints and 1,000 voices and all these things involved in the construction of the building. So what we're going to build, just a few of the technical stuff, I won't go into too much detail, but we're going to have 5 demonstration structures. So there's just a handful of the sort of buildings we might build. We're going to have a cooking demonstration, which is on the top left. Turf walls, thatch roof, and the use of couples in terms of an internal roof support. It's going to be the largest demonstration structure of all of them because food is the most important at the end of the day. And then the other thing, we're going to have a textile demonstration structure, which is going to be smaller, more intimate, but also it's going to be stone walled, thatch roof, central beam with a single lintel across the top, not using couples. So the point there being is, in terms of a footprint, the cooking and the textiles, if you were to approach it as an archaeologist, which is an important thing to come to here, if you were to approach it as an archaeologist, the footprint would be almost identical. But what we've done is we've celebrated the fact that through 2 completely different sets of materials, we're going to be able to look at how different those structures could be. And that's the point, is we're going to take those materials and celebrate the fact that it could be the height of stonework, it could be the height of thatch work, it could be the height of this, and then just kind of play with that idea. The visitors and the staff that deliver in the cooking and the textiles bring to life the people, but what we don't have now is a space that complements that. And when people look at it, they need to have the same sort of level of skill, talking about the craft, talking about materials that's in those structures as well. We have a couple of multi-purpose. This multi-purpose is a more traditional roundhouse reconstruction design as it goes. So what I mean by that is that we've got the typical, it's the one on the right-hand side there, the bottom right, as you can see it, circular structure, conical roof sitting on top of it. I'll come back to that in a minute. And then a woodworking square structure, as you can see in the top right, something that's quite functional, square structure, square rafters, something that we build a lot of now, but again, thatching it and playing with the different styles of buildings that would have been around or potentially would have been around in the Iron Age. We are going to build a crannog as well, unsurprisingly, with the Scottish Crannog Centre, but this is in the plans for the last thing to be built. Okay, this might sound a bit daft considering the crannog burning down is what's pushed us to the fact we have to move. But once we move, what our role is and what our job is and what our vision and our mission, our values drive us to do is to tell the story of the people that lived in crannogs in Loch Tay 2,500 years ago. The first place to do that is through the building of a crannog. So when we open in 2023 in spring, what we will be doing is we will be opening to a crannog being built, because when we want visitors to come in, what we'd love them to be able to do is to be involved in that process, understand that process and see that as a process that will be developing. That means that we don't have the crannog at the start. So what we've done is the decision was made that what we were going to build on the land as part of this was a roundhouse, okay? And the roundhouse process, all the other structures we talked about so far, they've been inspired by the archaeology. They've been inspired by what materials were around and what they could have used. The roundhouse itself is more of a direct, not replica, that's the wrong word to use, but a potential design of something that can be made and can be, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's based on a particular site.
Yeah, it's inspired by, but it is more one-to-one in terms of the direct archaeology that has inspired what we're going to build in the end of it. So on the left-hand side there, you've got it's Carndoo, which is a site up in Lochry, and what we've got there is a double, what seems to be on the archaeology anyway, a double stone wall. It's I butcher the term, but Dalrasians type roundhouse, which is particular to Perth in the late Bronze Age into the early Iron Age. And what you've got is, I don't know if you can see my cursor, it's probably not a very good cursor, but you've got one external outer stone wall footing that goes round and then one internal stone footing that goes round, with the indication that actually it meets together on one side, whereas the other side stays open. With further excavations, you can see in the centre one there, the inner stone wall. On the outside of the internal wall, there was a long run all the way around of not very large, couple of inch wide at the very most, post holes, regular and all the way throughout. So we work with primarily the wonderful Tanya at Edinburgh University. She was working with the idea of the inclusion of alternate roof styles. So we went back before, I'll just jump back very quickly. It's not a very good thing to do, but I'll jump back very quickly. That style that you see there, the circular roundhouse with the high cone roof, very typical. It's what a lot of reconstructions of roundhouses are based off. It's a historical thing. It's an archaeological reconstruction, which maybe is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, which kind of people in the past and archaeologists have tried to fit in to the design of what they're excavating. Go, right, well, this is the roundhouse style. Can we fit that in? We're trying to wipe not the slate clean, but actually go and revisit what's an alternate roof style. And we've worked with Tanya primarily, but also the UCD, experimental archaeology guys, Aidan O'Sullivan and Brendan O'Neill. We've formed this idea that actually the footprint that we're going to build is going to be identical to the excavation. What we're going to end up with is a basket framed roof, which goes straight into the ground, comes up to the top. It's a large dome in that sense. And then because of the low amount of stone in the walls, and also the presence on this late Bronze Age, early Iron Age site in between the walls of Neolithic flints, which would indicate perhaps the use of turf within the walls as well. So what you've got on the right-hand side there is my wonderful drawing.
No, they're not.
My wonderful drawing. No, Rachel did the drawings of what these this structure may have looked like. And again, I'm using the word may there, celebrating what we've got, what we might not know. So this is kind of going to be up. This is guaranteed to be up when the building would have been built, when the site would have been opened as such. So this is going to be something unique, something that should be quite bold in terms of its interpretation. So how is all of this fitting in with the model of what we've just seen with the trees? Trusted place, special place, place to grow. This is all sustainable in terms of how we're approaching this. So the buildings, what we do build, there's not going to be an Iron Age veneer around the construction. What we're going to build is not steel girders underneath the ground. It's not hidden metal pins. Everything's going to be constructed with prehistoric materials and with prehistoric techniques. Now, we don't live in the Iron Age, so there will be a necessity for modern technology involved in the construction. That will either be primarily for safety in that sense. So, you know, if we've got 25 logs to cut, a chainsaw does the same job as a normal saw, just quicker. And in fact, making somebody cut them with a hand saw will just give somebody tennis elbow. So it's just daft and it's not proving anything. So we're going to use modern technology as we go through. But when we step away from these structures, they'll be standing, as I said, with prehistoric materials, but also with the prehistoric techniques and how they're jointed, how they're doweled, how they're fastened, how they're lashed. What this fundamentally means is that they're going to fall down. So that's okay. This is a very bold statement, I know, but what it is it's, if these buildings, because they're built of organic material, the same materials that we used, they're going to disintegrate to nothing. In a pure carbon counting ecology world, that is sustainable. That's actually what you want. But in fact, with the buildings, it creates sustainability, because getting 7 years from a structure, the building will degrade in a sustainable manner. So what I mean by that is that we can come in, we can repair it. As we repair it, what we're doing is, as a centre, we're able to demonstrate those skills. We're able to demonstrate the process of repairing and maintaining these buildings. We're able to demonstrate that, you know, the concept of building a house and living in it for 75 years is not, you know, it's a modern thing. That's not prehistoric concept as it is. And we can actually keep sustainable craft alive by doing this. Green woodworkers, thatchers, turf builders, dry stone wallers, all these things that, you know, Historic Environment Scotland have identified that there needs to be more support to keep these skills alive. We're going to have a place here where we're going to need constant maintenance of these things, therefore keeping those skills alive in a sustainable way. Plan for the future. Obviously, we're going to need materials to do all this. We're not going to fly them in from all over the world. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to take the Lurb, as you can see it, and across the road is a Forestry Commission hill with a lot of woodland. And actually, in agreement with the Forestry Commission, we're intending to take over the management of that woodland. And by doing that, actually start to integrate coppice sites, integrate management of hazel, oak, birch, even potentially go up to alder, and actually have a woodland that's within walking distance of the Lurb that can supply and maintain the Lurb, making the museum cutting edge in terms of dealing with a very modern day issue of you know, environmental sustainability, but taking inspiration from people 2,500 years ago to learn about that and actually encourage the fact that the buildings we build can go back into the ground. And that is right, and that's the way of doing it. Okay. Not only that, as many people involved in the process of building it will actually keep this place going, because the more people, an army of volunteers that can do this, it creates a sense of place, creates a sense of ownership. Everybody that gets involved with the building of the Lurb should then be able to tell 10 people. And if I'm thinking like a mercenary, which I shouldn't, that means 10 more people know about us, and that means 10 more people can come and see us. But fundamentally, it means that the depth of sense of meaning for people that are able to work on the building developed because they were there when it started, they were involved in the construction, and they've seen the thing grow. And that creates a sense of place in that sense. We've managed to do this already with the bodies that have been involved in the process already. The architects have even agreed, the wonderful people at LDN Architects, Stuart and Christy and the gang, have actually agreed to send all their architect office laddies and folks down for a week to get involved in the build, just because they've bought in to what we want to do, and they've had a fantastic journey as we go. I'll run hurry up. So how do we take this in terms of 2023? Well, I won't go into this too much depth, but what you see there is we've got everything that we do. Okay, there's a big risk when moving a museum and moving an organisation with such a strong way of work that has got us through a lot of hardship, that when we get over there, we start to think we're more than what we are, if that makes sense. And what we have to do is not lose what I call the small museum mentality, okay? We will never be as well funded as the biggest national museums. We will never be as well staffed as the biggest national museums. We will never be as well resourced as the biggest national museums for the short term anyway. What we've got is we've got the same amount of time in the day. That's the great equalizer. We've got the same amount of hours that we are. And in those same amount of hours, we need to stay working with others. We need to stay immersive. We need to stay diverse. We need to stay that there's an abundance of knowledge. We need to keep saying yes, keeping those relationships alive. Don't lose the identity, and just keep everything human-sized. I think that's the most biggest thing. So with the Louvre, that for me is how we keep that, and we have to pick that up now and move that to a new site.
And just to say, building on the biting off more than we can chew, we found out we were doing this presentation 24 hours ago, and I'm very sorry that we didn't get time to practice because we have run over.
Yeah, so just very quick, just to finish off, when we're all done and we've built the Louvre, we've got over there, this is only project 1. What we're then going to rattle into straight away is the use of project 2. Just to give you an idea, from this line here, where the temporary car park will be, that's phase 1. The Iron Age village will be down here. Then the next step is we're going to go into project 2, and that is the use and the filling out of the entire site, which is the blue line. And with that, there is going to be 3 Crannogs. There's going to be a museum fit to hold international collections. With that, there's going to be workshops and incubation units for crafters and other people. With that, there's going to be social housing to enable to places where people, volunteers, all the fantastic people we want to work with have somewhere to come. So Neil doesn't have to sit in a tent in our site. He did enjoy that, but it would be nice to give him somewhere where he could actually stay and spend time. But the other thing is to bring in some community transport, and again, just build ourselves more into that community. And I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. You have to stop the share.
Brilliant, thank you. Well done, you two. That was really short notice. We know that, so thank you very much. Absolutely fantastic, and it brought lots of memories back of me being there, and really excited. I've taken pages of notes as well, which is great. So we've got some questions, so if you're happy, I'm just going to dive in with the questions. If anybody still wants to ask anything, just type it in. But here we go. So did the Crannogs very position out on the water and connected to the shore by just a narrow causeway make it, horribly ironically perhaps, hard to extinguish the fire?
Sorry, I'll jump in there because no, in fact, because it was interestingly, I know archaeologically, when you look at Crannogs, there's only one Crannog that I can't think of any others, but there's only one Crannog in Coatbridge, which is archaeologically showing any signs of burning down, mass burning down, of all the others. I'm sure it happened, it guaranteed it did happen, but they're actually fire, not with constant monitoring, which is what they would have had 2,500 years ago, no doubt. They're fairly fire safe. What was interesting with this is that nothing in the situation, the environment that was there was nothing from the first flame to the thing being engulfed 6 minutes. You don't even get in inner cities get any fire response that's within 6 minutes. So it's gone. But the Scottish Fire and Rescue, I have to say, they were fantastic. There was 5 there, and without them, there was actually would have been.
We would have lost our collection.
In another world, that fire would have spread towards the land along the walkway. So, yeah, they've got big hoses and they were great at putting it out. I don't remember much of that night, to be honest. It was a bit of a blur, but there you go.
yeah, Rich was fantastic, actually. Just to say, when we got there with the fire, we were the two first people on site, and I couldn't even get out of the car. Rich was out of the car, directing traffic, getting everybody down. He rang Mike. I said, Mike, the Crannog's on fire. This was 11 a.m. Mike was in bed. Mike goes, yeah, all right, call me in the morning. Put the phone down. He had to ring him back. No, seriously, it's on fire. The whole team came down, but it was it was quite an odd night.
Gary asks, how did the fire start?
We don't know. So we have some really, really good CCTV of the Crannog, and there was nobody on site. It was 2 hours after we closed. We do have a fire on in the Crannog during the day and during the evening for some events, but it'd all been put out as normal. We had fires along the Loch shore with people camping. It was a dry night. It was a windy night. It'd been very, very dry. We'll never know. Even the fire services and the police and everybody said it's just unfortunately sometimes one of those things where there's nothing you could have done to prevent to at that moment in time. It's just really unfortunate. We'll never really know, but very, very quickly I think the attitude had to become, it doesn't matter how it started, what matters now is what we do next.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is from Jonathan Gladwin. Jonathan has spoken about he's worked with Operation Nightingale in the past and Breaking Ground Heritage, who are organisations that help former Ministry of Defence operatives who have suffered post-traumatic stress and put their lives back together. They've done similar work on buildings and roundhouses and etc., especially at Butser Ancient Farm. Do you have a similar initiative? And how do you approach that thing about experimental archaeology? You mentioned it a little bit, but could you just elaborate on that?
So yeah, similar initiatives. We have a member of staff and an LTU, long-term unemployed member of staff, who is former Navy, who has gone through the exact sort of unfortunate circumstances of what you're talking about there, and he's actually part of the team. And he is going into next year, hopefully going to be part of the development of a project, which will actually...
Not a project, but...
part of the funded project, which will not be a project work, but it will be there to bring in much more groups in a very similar initiative to what you just mentioned. In terms of the experimental archaeology, we're in a process now. We have 1, 2, 3 different people that have come through that have all doing experimental archaeology degrees in a different shape or form on site. So we're awash with experimental archaeologists now. But the other thing is that we're going to start embedding in experimentation and recording once these buildings are built as we go.
We're working with University College Dublin Experimental Archaeology Department very, very closely. So they're guiding a lot of the work. Well, not guiding, but working with us on a lot of that work. And they are guiding, I would also say that even just in the past few weeks, we've been approached by a couple of the open prison services and a couple of the one service for women who have just come out of prison as well. And that's building on the work that we've been doing in the past few years with community groups, which we didn't mention a lot of here because we didn't surprisingly have time. But waiting on. But that there's lots of opportunities in the next year and beyond for all these different people to be involved. I hope that's okay.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I'm really interested in what real life experience and lived experience can bring to the sites that do reconstructions and the sort of activity you're doing. Yeah. And I obviously met the guy who was in the Navy, and it was a really powerful conversation because he openly admitted he was on HMS Sheffield in the Falklands War, and you suddenly standing there with what had happened to the Crannog Centre, with what happened in his life, and it becomes a much more meaningful and direct experience. Can you explain about some of those interactions you have with the people who are actually on the site who have had these past experiences? What do they bring to the visitor experience and your own personal experience?
I think the best way to connect to the diverse audiences outside the Crannog is by being a diverse community within it as well. So having all of those people with different experiences. One of our team very openly will also talk about the fact that she has been supported by Women's Aid Perth in the past, and she was leading the work that we were doing with them throughout this past year. So she brought a level of understanding that we didn't have into that work, and it was work that she promoted doing. It wasn't something that we decided, oh, we're going to do this project, we're going to hire this person. It came out of her values and her needs as well, and it just strengthened everything we've done. I think you can probably add to that.
Yeah, I think just the big thing is when you've got people that can talk about their experience, it means that we're never going out and targeting a group. It's a terrible word to use in museums. We're going to go and target this group. The second you start targeting that group, you ignore everybody else around them. And in fact, actually having these people in the organisation lets you, openly think about anybody. Again, we're not always for everyone, but we have to be there for anyone, if that makes sense. And by having the people in the organisation, it opens your mind. And I think it's done a lot of wonders for a lot of people within the organisation, having a diverse team to start. And I've seen it, people starting to think differently about their own lives and how they do things as well.
Yeah, we had a student last year who was non-binary come in, and for some of our older staff, we were concerned that might be challenging. And what it promoted was incredible discussions within the team, between people of different generations, people of different understandings, and it just brought everyone together. And they're an incredible person, and we fly the progress flag outside the museum, and it's the first thing you should see. And most people either understand what it means and want to come in. They don't really know what it is, and it doesn't affect their visit. And if they understand what it means and they don't want to come in, then that's good, because it keeps our staff safe and comfortable.
That's fantastic. Right, we've got just a couple more questions, and I do want to get to these ones because they're really good questions. So the first one's from Stuart, and it's quite a big question, so I'll just read it out.
Yeah.
Would you see the shore environment as requiring the same attention to authenticity in its design and construction as the roundhouse itself, if you're aiming for an integrated site that reflects life as it was? So that's the first element. So do you think the shore needs as much attention as the Crannog?
As best we can, yes. So what we've done is, that's why I've really clearly demarcated our 5 demonstration shelters from the roundhouse itself. The demonstration shelters aren't there to be archaeological replicas of specific sites. They're there to be demonstration shelters. They're there to demonstrate the skills and have a space where people can come. The roundhouse itself is functional, but again, that's steeped in the archaeology. So everything in that building has to be related to what we found or what was there on the footprint of the archaeological site. To connect the two, in terms of the roundhouse, in terms of the Crannog, the first Crannog we build is going to be based firmly off of the excavation of Oakbank, because that's what we know. That's our wheelhouse in a way. That's what we're going to focus on with that, and we're going to build what we had before again. Big reason for that is because it's the iconic building, and I think if we built something that was obscurely different, it would maybe sway expectations a little. And what we want is, you want to rebuild that icon. The next 2 Crannogs, we can go to town. In fact, I think even one of the other Crannogs is potentially down the line in phase 2. Love the idea of building Dunvaravat up on Lewis, actually taking a stone build Crannog and a stone mound and structure, and then the third Crannog could be some other weird and wonderful site. So there's that time to play, and that important word there is play. Experiment with these ideas and work. What we would do is I think what's on the land has to be inspired. It has to be materially relevant, but there is a clear demarcation between demonstration spaces and the reconstructions, if that makes sense. Or wobbling on.
Yeah, no, that does. No, it's perfect sense. And you sort of answered Stu's second question. But anyway, he goes on to say, in any case, great work and best of luck. I visited twice in the last few years and loved the whole experience both times. It was even better with more interactive stuff to do on the shore. So I think that's a real that they're a partnership, and they speak to each other in many ways. Right. Just a couple of things. Kat, my colleague, is just going to post up a link to a short survey that we'd like you to think about tonight's event. And This is Archaeology lecture series. It's just a simple link to a Survey Monkey survey. We'll also be posting you out a link to all those who've actually applied, but just Kat will put that in the chat if you could actually do that. That would be absolutely fantastic. I'm moving on to the last question now, and I don't mind making this person wait because this is actually a question from my sister, who is going to have to apologise to me, because her question is, it's quite remarkable what you have all managed to achieve so far, and your plans are very ambitious. Do you both have the best jobs ever?
Ask us that when we haven't had a day with 4 staff off with COVID.
24 hours notice to deliver this. Yeah,
yes,
no,
and I would like to...
It's a brilliant... what else would I do? Something, don't get me wrong, the way we do things and the way we work, we are a community. We can be, are we all related? We can be a big family. Big families, anybody that's got family knows that it's never always smooth sailing. Imagine that, but in what could be quite a high pressure environment, you get a lot of boom, and sometimes you have to take time to reflect on the job that we've got. And simply put, and I do say this regularly, it's the easiest job in the world, to be honest. It's just, we make it hard, but it is the easiest job in the world. I'm an archaeologist, and doing museums for me was something I'd never planned on doing. I fell into it. I volunteered and then ended up working and ended up going into this. And from a volunteer to the job I do now, it's been 8 years, and I don't think I'd do it for 8 years if it wasn't something worthwhile and meaningful. I think that's the big thing. I won't go on too much longer.
Yeah.
But meaningful museum work. Yes, it's the best job ever. Non-meaningful work, I'd leave it at the wayside.
And a lot of people that work in museums have quite similar values. Something I've been reading about recently, like the way we think about the work we do, and to work in a place that you feel that your values personally are reflected in the values of the place that you work is amazing. And also for us, being always learning. I know that sounds silly, but I think if you get to the point where you're not learning anymore in a job, then that's the point you kind of want to leave. And we both agreed that at some point, if we stopped learning, we would leave, and we've not got anywhere close. So that's really good.
Yeah, I got that sense when I came up to visit you. It's a place that draws you in, which is absolutely lovely. I was just hoping my sister might show a little bit more family loyalty and say that I've got the best job in the world. But I'm happy to concede your location on the edge of that lock is truly fantastic, and it was amazing staying there. I'm really grateful, and I'm really pleased that the next This is Archaeology lecture is about Roman Britain, and specifically Roman Britain's pirate king, with Simon Elliott. Simon's one of our trustees, and he writes a lot about the Romans, and he's really engaging, so this should be fantastic. It's going to be on Thursday, the 20th of October at 7 p.m. So please get on the website, the CBA website, book now and find out about all the other lectures in the This is Archaeology lecture series. And again, Kat's going to put the link into the chat there so you can follow that. And obviously you'll find out lots more on our social media and everything. I just leaves me just to say another huge thank you to Rich and Rachel for stepping in for Mike. Don't tell Mike you did a better job than he would have done. But he's been off doing planning committee, so that's fine. We are really excited about your journey and where you're going to end up, and we're going to have to get you back again. And maybe we might actually just have to all come up for the weekend, because the new site sounds absolutely amazing. I did get to walk over it. So just a huge thank you both for stepping in. Really great. Your passion and enthusiasm for that particular piece of land and bit of water is infectious, and it's really brilliant. So I'm really delighted. To everyone who was
planning did come back today, and just to let everybody know, we did get through. I don't think we ever actually said that.
Yes.
So.
No, that's a very good point. Yes, so
we are going to build.
We have got your planning permission. So that 2023 opening is real. Yeah, and that's next year, by the way. I just point that out, which is absolutely fantastic. So we'll definitely be that. Everyone else who's joined in and joined the talk, thank you all so much. Thanks for all your comments in the chat, for your questions. As ever, it's great to see so many of you and see you from see you from all around the UK. Absolutely fantastic. As we're a webinar, the brutality of this one is when we hit end, it will stop automatically and we'll all get thrown out. But thank you very much. If you want to post a few things in the chat, just say goodbye. That's great. And just follow those links. And then again, you can pick up all the information you need on our website. So Rich and Rachel, thank you all very much. Everyone for watching, thank you. And Kat, thanks for helping in the background.